I wonder how many people got that book and basically just ran chapter 1. You could run chapter 1 and then like pitch the book.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Every Edition, the Tabletop Talk podcast. We're still in the midst of figuring out formatting for how we want to do things, so we're still in Season 0. So welcome to Season 0, Episode 3.
But we do have that snazzy theme song at the beginning, which I'm quite the fan of. Thank you to the Elcars.
The Elcars are great. I've been listening to their album a lot recently.
Oh, good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
So today, our Loot the Body is Old School Essentials, the classic player's rules. I'm excited to hear more about that.
Yeah, definitely. We also have a segment today of a random encounter where we're going to take a look at 5th edition campaign books and whether or not they are too railroady or if they are the right amount of sandbox, if they're overwhelming. We'll get into it and talk about it from a perspective of new players and more experienced players.
I have so many words to get into about that. And of course we have the morale check, news of the day, news of the week, of stuff to go into. So John, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Had a great game on Friday night, running Dungeon Crawl Classics for the first time for a couple of colleagues. You were there.
I was there.
Which was wonderful.
We ran the Blackout in Crater Valley.
Crater Valley.
Yep. That we showcased in our previous episode, and that was really fun.
Yeah, the 80s theme I think really appeals to people who may not be regular role players. So it really was fun to have brand new people who have never played, in some cases never played role-playing games before.
Yeah.
But everybody was at the table was new to Dungeon Crawl Classics, so that was exciting for me. And we'll actually be doing, I think, a special episode where we talk just about how Blackout and Crater Valley went for us, and it will be spoilery. So
yes,
if you
full
check
spoilers.
out full spoilers, so if you check out that that episode, make sure that you're not planning to play it. It would be great if you played it, to listen to it and kind of compare your experience. And if you're planning to run it, it might be helpful to kind of hear another group's
as
time.
As a DM, I definitely have thoughts on how I would run it.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying anything bad about how you ran it because it was fantastically fun, but I have thoughts on I want to run it for some people.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about how I want to do it for the certain people that I want to run it for.
Excellent. Was that the first time that I ran for you?
Yes.
Okay.
I had never played in a campaign that you did before.
Yeah.
It was actually the first time I played any tabletop for 4 years.
That's because you've been doing
behind the screen.
Yeah, behind the screen for so long. So Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I am very happy. Fizbin's Treasury of Dragons finally came out. This book I've been waiting for my entire life, and I'm gonna take the week. I'm gonna read it all. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna report to everybody on just how great this book is. The table of contents has the word dragon on it 80 times, so I'm happy. I'm happy.
I read the first couple pages, and it does say something about if we use uppercase dragon, we mean all kinds of dragons, including what's that giant dragon turtle thing in the water?
Oh yeah.
But if we use lowercase dragon, we're just referring to chromatic or metallic or gem dragons. And I was like, wow, it's been a long time when we had a book that required some a vocabulary teaching or litmus test at the beginning to make sure you can get it.
There's no pronunciation guide though.
Okay.
And that's a bad thing when it comes to D&D dragons because they're very long words.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to that. We'll have to showcase that in a future episode. So now it's time for our morale check.
News this week.
What's up,
so,
Jesse?
Well, I guess it's not really news this week, but the Strixhaven 5th edition book, which is the next 5th edition book to come out, was supposed to come out in November. It's been pushed back. I believe the date is the 17th of December. The Tuesday of that week. I imagine that's because of paper shortages and plastic shortages that have been ongoing since since last year, which is unfortunate. But I mean, hey, if we get a quality product out of it, cool. I'm really excited about that book. It introduces a lot of interesting things that came with Strixhaven in Magic the Gathering, which, if you're unfamiliar, is very much like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
You've got like houses, and you go through Strixhaven in years as a group, So the book itself actually comes with almost like a yawning portal type of approach to campaigns. Like there's years that you go through that are certain level brackets.
Okay.
And you can pick and choose and import those into your game, or you can run them straight through level 1 to 10 using the Strixhaven book itself in that world. But it's made to be like drag and drop into your campaign, whatever setting that may be. It also introduces Owlin, which are owl people.
The owl people.
It seems like Wizard of the Coast is getting more comfortable with the idea of characters having innate flight with some restrictions.
Okay.
And they do have the ability to fly. There's also going to be new monsters and new spells and new magic items.
I mean, the real question is, can they turn their head all the way around? I mean, that flight schmite.
Extra perception, yeah.
So I guess similarly, in terms of product delays, I mean, that is kind of the story right now. If you've backed anything on Kickstarter, or you've been waiting for any books to be published, it does seem like publication dates keep getting kicked. The third edition of Hyperborea, which is a role-playing game put out by Northwind Adventures, very very first edition esque in terms of its rules, but their release date has gotten moved back to April or even May.
Jeez.
So, and I know too, there was an email that came out from Troll Lord Games that really talked about the delays, and what they shared at Troll Lord Games was because they do everything in the United States, they're not experiencing those same delays that a lot of other people are, and they're happily bragging about it. So
they don't have to worry about overseas shipping.
Yeah, so kudos to you, Troll Lord Games, for supporting local businesses and for supporting American industries. And I read the whole. It was a very long email that Stephen Chenault sent out. I read the whole thing, and I was like, yeah, you should be patting yourselves on the back. Everybody else is struggling right now, and you guys are moving forward. I noticed too, they've got their Monsters and Treasure book. They've got an alternate cover that's going to match the same alternate cover scheme that they've been doing of sort of recreating the original 70s first edition D&D books with new art. So
nice.
I'm going to pick that up. Even though it's the same book, it's got alternate art, and it's going to match the other stuff. So I got to get it.
It's like the Fizbin's book. I like the cover of the original one, but I had to get the alternate cover.
Sure.
You can't miss out. You can't miss out. In Magic news, as we have come to learn, I am very, very versed or very into the Magic scene, especially when it came to the D&D Magic set. I wish we had started this back before that had come out, because I mean we could spend a whole episode talking about the awesomeness that was the Dungeons and Dragons set, and there's actually going to be another one next year.
There should be one every year.
I think so too. That one's going to be focused on Baldur's Gate.
Oh, great!
So cool. that'll be a good time to talk about Baldur's Gate stuff too. Yeah. But Crimson Vow is the newest Magic stuff coming. It's a set coming out on the 19th, I believe, is the Friday. So not this Friday, but the next.
Cool.
And that's going to be all vampire stuff. It's still sort of the Halloween season. They did a Midnight Hunt, which was all werewolves. This one's all vampires. And they're actually going to do in early February, I believe it is, a double feature where they put cards from both sets into one big set in sort of like a monster movie double feature sort of fashion.
That's going to be cool. The best part of that werewolf set that came out, I thought was the black and white alternate art cards. Those were great.
They continue that sorta into Crimson Vow. This one's definitely more of the sort of, vampires are meant to be, very high fantasy, high class, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But they do have as box toppers when you buy a full box. You get a little pack, and they're cards that you can find in the set, but have different names and different arts. Sort of like the Godzilla cards from Ikoria 2 years ago now. But they're all Dracula themed. So there's like 6 different Dracula cards, and there's Castle Dracula, and a couple other stuff from Dracula and Bram Stoker stuff.
Cool.
It's interesting.
Cool.
I'm excited for it.
Excellent. Well, one last bit of news coming from Kickstarter here. There's a Kickstarter right now called Tournament of Pigs, and the reason this is worth paying attention to is because it introduces the idea of 0 level characters and the 0 level funnel and lots of character death, but it introduces it to 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. And so it does come with a guide to how to run level 0 character creation and then how to transition from level 0 to level 1 all within the rules of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So that's worth paying attention to. I do feel like it's a little pricey. Okay. And I'm want to see kind of where the Kickstarter ends in terms of stretch goals and stuff, because it's expensive for just getting, some cardboard cutouts and stuff. The idea of introducing the 0 level funnel into 5th edition is brilliant. I think it's a great way to introduce people, to Dungeon Crawl Classics potentially, but also to this idea of like, hey, character creation via the funnel, not just saying like, I want to always have a superhero that's of my design, but instead like let the dice do a little bit of the work and kind of randomize it.
For anyone who may not be aware, Dungeon Crawl Classics is the main core of the game that we had on the previous episode focused on, the Blackout and Crater Valley. That has as its core, as its main drive, is the 0 level funnel, where you make a bunch of 0 level characters, you let the dice roll them all, and you put them through the ringer into a dungeon or something, and whoever survives whatever encounter you have gets to level up to be a level 1 character. I think
they've earned the right.
We can maybe talk about this a little bit later, but too many times books in D&D assume that the level 1 character or the party already knows each other, or characters who rolled stats might have 318 level stat. Their stat scores might be very, very high, but it's not very. I don't know, realistic. I don't want to say realistic because it's Dungeons and Dragons, but putting that into D&D is really, really cool because it takes, like, I was taking a look at it at the PDF, and it shows you like, okay, well, if your character is a farmer, you have this for your ability scores for I don't know, strength or whatever. You're really good with a pitchfork. That's your weapon that you pick up. So it sort of gives you a little bit more of a help with a backstory as well, but it still keeps it random, which is really good about Dungeon Crawl Classics. They keep things random. I'm really psyched about this Kickstarter. I think this gives a session 0 a little bit more weight because, especially with a lot of new players, it makes it more fun.
Yeah,
like just sitting around with people and making characters is fun for people who like to do that.
Yeah.
But new players, as I've found, everybody's asking questions and nobody's really following along because there's not like a teacher for each person.
Right.
So this sort of just let the dice do all the work. We sit down, and during the session 0, we figure out who our level 1 characters are going to be.
Yeah,
and I think that's a lot easier, and you can learn while you're doing it.
Well, and I think some of the best games have character creation built in. Like that's how you start.
Yeah.
Right. So I know at some point soon I want to talk about mazes from 9th level games, and character creation is part of the game. That's what you start with. I think one of the things I like about 0 level characters and the 0 level funnel is rolling them up together. Yeah. And the randomness of it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I got a farmer, or I got a butcher, or I got what is the weird what is the weird occupation of my 0 level characters going to be? So yeah, it's a great idea to bring it to 5th edition and maybe introduce some people to that idea of the backstory. Who were you before you were a wizard? Or like, who were you before you were a thief? And like, what does that look like? And how did you come together as a party? Well, let's actually play it out.
Yeah, I really like that.
All right, so let us know what you think, either in the comments section or send us an email at everyeditionrpg@gmail.com. We also have set up everyeditionrpg.com as our website, and it is optimized for your phone, and it'll take you to all of our socials. So it'll take you to Facebook, it'll take you to Twitter, it'll take you to Instagram, it'll take you to Patreon, it'll take you to Spotify, it'll take you to Apple Podcasts, and it does have a button too for Gmail. So check out everyeditionrpg.com and interact with us online. At this point, we're trying to post every day on our socials and something different across all the platforms. So
don't miss out.
So don't miss out. It's worthwhile to check out everything that we're up to and get your daily dose of every edition.
And we were just talking about Kickstarter related things, and I always find the people I talk to tabletop related have different wants and needs when it comes to tabletop Kickstarters. So I'm curious to see anybody who's listening to let us know either via email or in the comments if you've backed anything on Kickstarter, if you've been happy with that, or what you look for in a Kickstarter.
Yeah, what makes for a good Kickstarter? It does seem to be that just about every role-playing company now is putting their stuff on Kickstarter first, right? And so it's their way of sort of anticipating pre-orders, and a lot of the times you can get a nice little goodie. Yeah. But sometimes it feels like you're paying to wait.
So my Kickstarter story, I backed, I think it was at the beginning of this year, and it's supposed to come in March of next year. There's been no delays as of yet, but there's a game called Ouroboros that was produced and written by Chris Metzen, who is was the lead, not game designer, but like a story director at Blizzard Games. He made a lot of the World of Warcraft lore, StarCraft, Overwatch, all that stuff. So a really, really good storyteller. And he left Blizzard and decided to make his own 5th edition just world. And that I backed earlier this year. I said that when the Kickstarter started that I would back it at the highest tier, and I immediately did the first day. It's like $200, but like, it came with a bunch of goodies. We're gonna get DM screen and I think like a first day coin, some dice and whatnot, a couple of books. It's gonna be really fun, and I always like talking about Kickstarter with other people too, because there's stuff that I'm not aware of that I think other people could share. And we could all enjoy something as well and get some goodies because it's on Kickstarter.
That sounds good. All right, it's time for a random encounter. Today's random encounter is thinking about 5th edition campaign books. So this has been how Wizards of the Coast has been, at least for the first 3 or 4 years of 5th edition, been releasing adventures in these hardcover campaign books. So they are the dominant, product for Wizards of the Coast, because there's been more campaign books than anything else.
Than literally anything else.
Than anything else that they've put out.
Maybe that's why I like Fizbin so much.
Yeah, because it's a breath of fresh air. But I've been talking to a lot of new gamers, a lot of people that are new to the hobby, and they've expressed to me that they find these campaign books to be really intimidating. That they are, they're thick books, and they tell epic stories that require you to do a lot of memorization of character names and a lot of preparation in terms of making sure that you know the political backstory of everything that's going on. And sometimes you just want to roll some dice, so I get it. There are definitely times where I would much rather just kind of have a random chart for a tavern that says like, there's these, roll on this chart. Oh, there's these 3 guys in the tavern, and just kind of almost do a little improvisation and let the dice take you and your imagination take you where you go. Other people, I know that it's really, a story is very important.
So the Wizards of the Coast has evolved through 5th edition, through the years. The very first campaign, the Tyranny of Dragons, is a by the book railroad campaign. I've run it 3. I'm on my 4th current DMing it through for a group.
You've run it 3 times.
Yeah.
And you're running. Wow, this is a fourth time. I don't think I've ever run anything 4 times.
So I tend to run things multiple times because I either keep to 5th edition books or homebrew, and I always have some amount of new people in my group. I think our group is the only one where I guess we had a new person as well, Justin. So I always have new people, and the one group that I'm running now is either all new players or they've been out of the game for a while. So I wanted something that was fun, but also, a little bit new player friendly. Not to say it's not difficult or interesting, but and I always find a way, because I'm very much an improv DM.
Yeah.
I like low prep. So I find ways to make it my own each time. Like the very first time I ran it was was the time that this group they started. So a spoiler alert for Tyranny of Dragons. It's been out for like 7 years. I'm sorry. The main focus of the game is to follow the cult of the dragon as they are trying to resurrect Tiamat. And they're going around the Sword Coast pillaging and grabbing gold, and they're gathering gold as an offering to Tiamat. So this group, they took all the spoils, didn't give them back to the towns that they came from, and they just kept them all, and used that to start their own town, which is how the town of Steve was born. So that might be a story for another time.
Yeah,
but,
your homebrew world.
Yeah, that's really what started my homebrew world. So there's different things that you can do with it, but the book itself is very railroady. It's quite literally, you spend one or 2 chapters going from Baldur's Gate to Waterdeep on the trade way, and you roll dice and you role play 40 days on this thing, and it's like, okay, well, we're on a trail and we're still on the trail, and you keep going, and then you keep going up and up and up, and that's okay. But one of the most recent campaign books, Icewind Dale, is actually like, I'm running that currently with a different group. That's like the most open-ended book I've ever seen.
More of a sandbox.
Very, very much a sandbox. You start in 10 towns, which is very, very far north in the Sword Coast, and there's 10 towns in it, and there's different quest lines and different rumors and things that you can do. You can start your characters in any of the 10 towns.
Okay.
And there's no real hard, fast, this is when you need to start the story. You can have your characters just, have fun in the different 10 towns and meet people and have fun and help them out, do these little quests, and then do the story. Or you can do one quest and say, okay, it's now time for the story, and then you get into the story that's a little bit more focused. But it's very much a sandbox.
Yeah.
So they've definitely gone away from the railroady stuff into a more open to interpretation. And they say in a bunch of the newer books in the very beginning, like, hey, if you're a DM, you don't need to follow this to the T.
Right.
Use your own discretion for this.
Yeah. I can't help it, but in terms of my style of DMing or game mastering, I definitely prefer to not have an epic story, right? To have exploration be the name of the game, to have that dungeon, and are you gonna turn left or right, and then once you make that decision, then there's any number of doors depending on which one you chose, and the characters, the player characters feel like they have a little bit more control, and obviously I can I'm overseeing the whole thing, but they're picking the route, and I think that sandbox feel of being able to make those choices and have them matter is so important, and it does for me. It also yields much less prep time. Like I don't have I really don't. I like playing in games that have epic stories. I don't like running games that have epic stories. Like somebody else can run that epic, like you ran for our group Out of the Abyss, right? And I think Out of the Abyss does a nice job of having both, right? It does does definitely have a sandbox where you can explore the Underdark, but it also has certain things that kind of need to happen in order for things to unfold.
There's replayability there.
Yeah, and it felt as a player, right? You ran it for us. As a player, I felt like I could actually make decisions of what direction to go, and I couldn't tell which parts were sandbox and which parts were railroad.
Sure.
And so that to me is a good adventure, and it obviously had a big epic story, but that sort of the epic story part of Out of the Abyss was sort of in the background.
Sure.
Right, and
I think that's where it needs to be.
Yeah, I liked that.
It was definitely a challenge prepping for Out of the Abyss. There are books that are easier to prep with, and books that aren't. Waterdeep Dragon Heist and Out of the Abyss are definitely ones that you could read chapter 1 and then run chapter 1 and then run chapter 2 after that. But unless you read ahead and know where things can go. Because it is slightly open-ended, it leads itself to more prep time.
Yeah.
And you need to know more about the Underdark. Like, if you're going to be running around in the Underdark, you need to be able to tell your characters what they see, what they feel, how the Underdark works. It's not like the surface world that's like ours. It's completely different. And especially if you go into cities like Menzoberranzan, you need to do a little bit of research and look at the history of the city itself. And even look towards some of the older books. Like I read through an old, I think it was a 2nd edition book on the Drow. I had to read through a little bit of that, which is like really fun. Yeah, I enjoy that, but some people don't.
Right, sure. Yeah, I wonder with the Out of the Abyss book, you mentioned that the different chapters, right? How it's laid out. I wonder how many people got that book and basically just ran chapter 1, the escape from the jail. Because that's fun, and it doesn't require any, like, you're just trying to get out of a drow prison.
Typical start to an RPG,
And you could run chapter 1 and then, like, pitch the book. Like, because, that's just kind of a way to bring people together. Like, you've all been captured by the drow. And it worked really, that first chapter worked really well as a low-level, bringing a party together. I know that's what happened with, part of the genesis of this particular conversation is my son was interested in running Out of the Abyss, and he ran chapter 1, and then they wanted to do something else, and I think also it seemed like a lot, right? And you could jump into that first chapter and have a good time, and then when you start going beyond chapter 1, it's like, oh, this is a little bit of a slog. I gotta invest some serious prep time.
You got to know all the dragon or the demon lords.
Yeah, no thanks. Right, no thanks. Like it's just so to each his own. But I do when I think about the different kinds of games that you can run at the table, I often think about how it's similar to video games, right? And sometimes you want to have that video game RPG that has that epic story, and you're not really worried that your character is going to die. It's really about
heavy plot armor.
It's really about plot. You've got plot armor, and it's really about a time commitment and enjoying the story, right? And then there's a game like Minecraft, where like that's the sandbox, right? Where you're out and you're playing.
You can do anything.
Right, you can do anything. You can go anywhere, build whatever you want. And that's sort of the analogous, I think, to that more improvised, random rolling on charts kind of style that I like. And then I think, too, sometimes you just want to play Pac-Man or Tetris or something like that, right? Where you're just, it's simple.
Completely random.
Yeah.
Simple.
Really just like a really basic kind of dungeon crawl where, you have your core characters and you're exploring a cave system, or you're exploring a
a dungeon. You have a dragon. There you go.
And you know what? I love playing Pac-Man. I love crawling around dungeons. So it's a good, that works for me too.
So I often think about are books even good for new players? And I think in general the campaign books for 5th edition are some place that I would start. somebody. Like Tyranny of Dragons, I think if a DM came to me and they were new, and I work at a comic shop, so I get this question a lot.
Yeah.
I often point them to Horde of the Dragon Queen, which is the first part of that campaign, because it is a little bit more railroady. It doesn't require as much prep or improvisation. It's got a lot of things laid out that if you want, you could do it, to the T, and it would still be fun. I think that books, at least in 5th edition, give you a good structure and let you find out what kind of DM you want to be. Because, if let's face it, if you're trying to DM for Dungeons and Dragons, you either have a group of people who want to try it because they heard that it's fun, and you're the person who's going to run it.
Yeah.
Or you watched something like our podcast or Critical Role or something, and you really want to get into it, and you're still trying to figure out what kind of DM you are. And there's definitely DMs who are like Matt Mercer, who are very much a cooperative storyteller about a big, epic, grand story that the characters are helping tell the story. Or you can be, sort of random, hey, we're going to go buy the books, or we're going to have a low story, high random encounter kind of deal. There's a lot of different ways that you can go as a DM, and I think that at least at the very beginning, having a small structure to how you go about that can help you figure out, okay, hey, I like this, or hey, I don't like this. And some of the earlier campaign books for 5th edition, like Storm King's Thunder or Tyranny of Dragons, really give you an internal look at how you approach DMing.
Excellent.
And there's so many books, and like you said, there's so many campaign books compared to player books,
right?
That you can really run a game even if you just run the starter kit, and then you go talk to somebody who knows all the books. You can find a book that's designed for you as a DM, which I really like how they've treated 5th edition so far.
Excellent. Well, let us know what you think, everybody. Do you prefer detailed campaign books with epic adventures, or easily digestible modules and open-ended exploration? Do you prefer to prioritize pre-planned stories or fast and loose improvisation? Let us know at everyeditionrpg@gmail.com, or go to everyeditionrpg.com to find all of our socials and interact with us. We'd love to know what you think about campaign books and improvisation, and what's your preferred
homebrew
method? Yeah, or homebrew. What's your preferred method of gaming? All right, so it's time to loot the body.
Loot the body.
Loot the body is when we take a look at what's been staring us all in the face here for the whole episode.
Yes.
And today it is Old School Essentials Classic Fantasy Players Rule Tome. So this is put out by Necrotic Gnome, and the author here is Gavin Norman. It is this particular book is everything that a player would need to be playing BX Dungeons and Dragons, basic and expert Dungeons and Dragons. So this is a reformatting of the BX rule system from the early 1980s. It's reformatted, so it combines the basic and expert rather than having two separate books. Now you've got it all together in one book. And this particular one has everything, like I said, everything a player is going to need. So you've got your 7 classes, how to roll up characters. They also have a rules tome, which actually is harder to find. The Classic Fantasy Rules Tome is harder to find because it does have everything that a dungeon master would need then too. So it includes
more stuff.
Yep, it includes the monsters and treasure and stuff like that. But this book you can find on Exalted Funeral for $22. And I think it's money well spent, because it really is a great representation of those BX rules, and formatted in a way that is just crisp and absolutely beautiful.
Digestible.
Absolutely digestible. Gavin Norman is acclaimed at this point for his formatting. And that might not seem like a big deal, but trust me, it's a big deal.
Yeah, go back and read the old stuff, and you'll see.
It's just great to have those two books merged. I know a lot of people, right? They had the original versions of Basic and Expert had the 3-hole punch in them, so that basically you were creating your own book, merging them together in a 3-ring binder. But
It's
imagine,
heavy.
but imagine just someone going back and with an eye towards, hey, I'm going to make this one book, and I'm going to have modern aesthetic, and it's just a wonderful thing. If you're a fan of the basic and expert system, or you've never tried an old school Renaissance and OSR game before, I think this is a great place to start. So check out Old School Essentials Classic Fantasy Players Tome. Like I said, $22 on Exalted Funeral.
So can you use this as just a pick it up and go system with any sort of story you may want to tell?
Yeah, so the nice thing about this, because it's based on the basic and expert system, is you've got that whole library of adventures from the late 70s and throughout the 80s and into the early part of the 90s that work with this. And there's a lot of new people that are putting out new adventures that have that like Old School Essentials stamp of approval sort of thing. So the fact that you've got over a decade's worth of stuff from the 80s, and then you've got lots of new adventures
support,
being published, new support for Old School Essentials. It's really easy to find material
to
run.
Thinking about, you had mentioned the 7 classes. We had talked a little bit about how 5th edition is gaining a lot more in terms of customization.
Sure.
I think that there's a good spot for Old School Essentials there, where you're kind of limiting yourself to a couple of options, and I think that's really good, and I think that's a big plus to this system.
Yeah, I think this would be good fodder for another episode, because I wonder sometimes if more customization isn't just more of the same, like a reskinning of a lot of things, where it's not actually more, right? Whereas with a game like Old School Essentials, it only has 7 classes or whatever, but every single one of those classes is distinct and different from the others in a way that arguably I think there's a lot of stuff in
sameness,
5th edition and newer D&D stuff that's the same, and it's just got a different coat of paint on it.
Well, this has been Every Edition. We are still trying to figure out our format, like I said, so we're still trying new things out. We have new goals and things like that to do. Specifically, if you could like the video, subscribe on YouTube if you're on the YouTube, check out our audio version of the podcast, because there are differences. There are benefits to listening to the audio podcast and watching the video podcast. And specifically, we have a goal of trying to hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. And I think that's possible. Yeah,
if you hit 100 subscribers on YouTube, you can have a custom URL. So I'm itching to do that, and it's a modest goal that I think we can hit pretty quickly. So please do subscribe on YouTube and hit those like bells and buttons and all that good stuff. And like I said too at the top of the episode, I'm working hard to keep all of our socials unique and different. So check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All 3 of them should have something different. And our Patreon, I'm keeping kind of a behind the scenes journal of sort of our process and sort of what's going on.
And if you have any suggestions of things to cover in our Loot the Body section, you can let us know in the comments. Or if you have suggestions on things that we can do to improve the show in general, let us know. Don't hesitate. We will take the criticism.
I'm John.
I'm Jesse.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Have a good night.